Most shocking prices in Lorcana, and I think it's just this week or maybe just an overall of like the first 3 weeks here. But let's be honest. Like, I think, what do we have? What was the number here, Scott? We have 8.
Yeah, 8 cards.
All right. So we have 8 cards to talk about here and their prices. And Scott picked all of them, even though I agree with pretty much all of them anyway. But our first one to start with is a whole new world. So talk to me about a whole new world, Scott.
So I think a big theme of this is that the decks we talked about in the past just now have a huge influence on the prices that you're going to see. The other thing that's interesting about the 8 cards we chose is the foil versions of a lot of these cards have gone up in higher percentages than even the regular. So if you are looking to trick out your deck with foil versions, you're going to be paying a premium for these specific cards because they are very popular. The one thing to point out here is a lot of the low prices for a lot of these cards were when the game launched at LGSs. So right around August 18th or even pre-sales. Some of them immediately went up after pre-sales, and some of them went up later in the game. So as you see here, the peak for A Whole New World was after the event, so it was after last weekend. The other thing that happened overall in the market, as predicted, was when the big box release, in between the LGS and the big box release, there was an overall giant increase in prices of cards. The thing that also happened was after the big box release, as we talked about in the very beginning, prices went up again because it was not as expected. Prices have gone down a little bit since then because even though the big box releases have not been steady, it does not mean that it was non-existent. So even though you have a smaller percentage of players in getting product, a lot of the players that are getting product, some of them are resellers. So the overall price is coming down as those, some of those people just aren't players and they're trying to make back that money. So A Whole New World. The other thing to point out is there aren't a lot of super rares that are that great. So of the 12, I'd have to count it out, but I don't even think it's half.
18? It's 18, right?
18, sorry, yeah. So I don't even know that you can say there's 9 really good super rares.
Now, just because I want to make this real quick, can you also say that we can say the same for legendaries, right? Like half of them?
Yeah, probably.
So like half of them are like above $25 and the other half are like below 15?
Yeah, below 20, I would say, yeah.
That's below 20? Okay. Yeah. So half are above 30, half are below 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But the thing with super rares is that you get more of them in a box than we expected in the very beginning.
You get like 12 of them on average.
Yeah. And some of them aren't very good.
Sure.
So in order to try to make up the money that you open in certain packs, they're just going for more money. So when they are playable, they just tend to go for more. Right. So this card's had a huge swing. You were able to get it for like $11, $12 in the beginning during LGS release. And right this second, it's sitting above $18. That's like the current all these are market prices, by the way, not lows. So it's sitting above like $18.50, $18.66, and the highest that it went again was earlier this week or late last week after the big box quote release, and it had gone over $20 right after the events. Right after the event.
Is the green line the foil line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, you see a huge premium on foils for these cards.
Yeah, so you're talking right now it's like a $40 foil?
Close to that, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in that. I'm just saying, hard numbers here. We can't see the actual number there.
Yeah.
So the current price for the normal, like the non-foil version here is $18.66. That's market, right?
That's market, yeah.
Market. So $18.66, and then you're looking at the foil cost, which is nearly $40. That's actually over double, of what this card's current cost is. And I think that's a really interesting thing because in a lot of other games, that's just not true. Double for a foil seems ridiculous in most cases, but in this game, for some reason, it almost feels warranted.
Agreed. It's really pretty as a foil too.
Yeah, it helps. It helps. All right, so our next card is Ariel, Spectacular Singer, and would we say that the winning deck is, like an unbelievable key factor for this one?
Yes.
This card was what? $3, right? You can see the number. It was $3.64 before the before the 25th, right? So The day that it peaks is the 27th, it looks like, which is the day after PPG, right? PPG was 826, I think. Oh, no, it wasn't. Yeah. PPG was 9.3. So this actually started to peak before PPG.
It starts to go up because basically supply of cards in general is just
sure.
Go up. So I think what you have here is because it was a super rare, because it's a known character, some people just started buying it up in general earlier on, but then after PPG is when it starts to really peak. And hits its high price is actually right now market wise.
Yeah.
So it's currently going for its highest price right now, market value wise.
Interesting.
And you're hard pressed to find them at anywhere in the 12s right now.
Now, do you think that this is a card that has potential to continue to rise?
In the long run, I think it's a potential that has. So, okay, if we assume that cards overall are going to rise in price after things settle down right now, like so after a lot of these sellers get rid of the product they have right now, and big box stores don't get refreshed, if LGSs don't get as much as they're supposed to get, depending on when they get it in October, etc. Yes, but I do the main thing I believe for this card is it has the ability to hold its value longer, because it's only going to go up as more songs get printed, and songs are going to be evergreen, even if they're. I mean, I would imagine I don't even know how many songs are in the set, like 10 or something like that, 10 to 12. So I would imagine that that's probably consistent considering how important Disney songs are. So whereas you might not see as many of other keywords, I do think you're going to continue to see a lot of songs. So I think her value is more evergreen than other cards.
Yeah, you'll see moving forward, you'll see more songs, you'll see more singer abilities, etc. But I mean, her ability right now, she's the best singer in the game,
right?
Like bar down. So I don't know how the only way that changes is if somehow the songs that are made that are cheaper than her are like warranted in some way. But to me, she's always gonna be really good. I think the next closest thing that even compete would be like a 4, or I guess it'd have to be a 5 cost by most determinations, but like a 5 cost that can sing the 7. But even right now, that's only singing Be Prepared. But that card would be, a really, really good card.
Or a 1 cost that can sing 3s.
Yeah, 1 cost that could sing 3 would definitely break barriers, huge barriers. All right, so our next card, this is our first anomaly, right? Because I don't even think you can explain this one to me.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it went down. I can see, thank God. Talk to me about the Who's It Collector here.
So at some point this week, Ariel Who's It Collector was going for over $10, and I didn't understand why. I think it was speculation. I think it was just people buying Ariel because it's a cool art. Maybe they got the Ariels confused. I don't know, honestly. But at some point I looked down and Ariel Who's It Collector was going for over $10, and I didn't understand why. Again, that was a general, like you can see like the
I think it was on Wednesday morning specifically. So it was 3 days ago where I was in the middle of the stream and I remember I opened one. I was like, oh, hey, Scott, look, here's $10.
Right.
I mean, we didn't even see a Sapphire deck in the top 8 that we just covered. B, even if there was a Sapphire deck in the top 8, I don't think this card would have been in it. So like, this is just a weird jump. Was there just like not a lot of them? Like, is that have anything to do with it?
It was over. Yeah. It again last week after the big box quote launch debacle, I think people just had a ton of FOMO for getting any cards, and because this is the same rarity of a lot of those other cards, a lot of people just jumped on like, I can pay a little bit more to get this deck, even though it doesn't have results, versus I can pay a lot more to get this other deck that has a bunch of rares in it that are going for like a ton of money.
Fair.
So I think it's a rising tide raises all ships with Ariel, no pun intended. But at her rarity, she falls into a tier of like fringe playable, and I think people just like, if I need to build a deck in general for under $100, I can play her. So her price just rises in general.
Interesting. So while being a budget deck, we create a position where we're no longer a budget deck.
Yeah, that's what happens a lot of times. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. All right, so Be Prepared. I can't believe this card was ever $7. Is my first point. The high point, I thought it was higher than this, but I guess I was just wrong.
It's market, not like what it's actually selling.
Oh, okay. I
mean,
okay. So the market high point.
I will tell you, I've sold a foil for over $90.
Right. So yeah, I mean that's number one. Number two, I think that we were selling these at like $23 and we couldn't keep them in stock.
Yes.
So maybe we're a tribute to the market price being 1738. I'm not sure, it's not certain, but this is a card that's it's dropped. What all right, so we're talking about it went up $12, $11, and then it dropped now another $5 or $6. Why do you think? What do you think in the drop is here?
I think the people that want to play Ruby Amethyst have their decks done.
Okay,
is part of it. I think. I don't think people have cracked a code on playing it in a different deck. I think it possibly could see play in different decks. So its universal use is you're still only building one deck with it that most people think.
Right.
And I think it just Ruby Amethyst just isn't the flavor of the week like it was a week ago. So I think that's the concept. And it is a rare.
Right.
Again, I know it doesn't seem like there's more product out there, but there technically is more product out there, and there is more product out there for people that are selling cards. Right. So,
and there's more people selling cards.
There's more people selling cards, so it's a race to the bottom for them. If you look on TCG Player, you'll see a lot of people with very low number of sales affecting the price. And honestly, when people go to a store and are able to buy cards, they're buying every single card they can find.
Right.
So if they are a reseller, they are restocking themselves higher than a regular person off the street. So it just causes that race to the bottom to happen more often among just sellers, not necessarily among all players.
Right.
So because it is a rare and people are sometimes buying multiple boxes worth of product at a time and opening it, you're just getting more of them. So those same people that probably aren't players, probably aren't Lorcana players, you look at the names on there, they don't have Lorcana based names or anything like that. You don't know who they are. I don't recognize their names. They're just like, well, I have 3 of this card because I bought 4 boxes. I was able to get like 4 boxes of product at my 3 targets that I went to. So I'll just put it at the low, and it just causes the market to drop. But I think
because no matter which way we look at it, if you can get a pack for, I said this at the beginning of the stream, if you can get a pack, you have to pay $350 for a box. I promise you can still make money on that box.
Right.
Which is insane to say, but it's like all of the supply and demand effects to all of this is just creating this unbelievable number that weeks ago I would have been like, man, 250 is unbelievable. And now I'm going, man, 350 is like maybe I would do that. Like if we were in a position where we were like out of stock of everything, it's like, well, we can probably still be okay with paying $350 a box. And that's just like, it's just like the hard truth. That, and I don't have one on this stream, but it's like they're selling on TCG Player for like $380 still. And we're talking like 5 or 6 or 7 boxes a day that are selling for $380 on TCG Player. So people are buying them. All right. First legendary. This is another one that's pretty big. Now, I guess to preface this real quick, Scott, though, do you think to start, when we learned that legendaries were actually like more than 2 a box, and there was this gigantic influx of cards released at Gen Con and at the beginning of the release weekend, and like, do you think that there's a chance that legendaries were just underpriced?
The ones, sort of. It had to do with the fact that people also thought that Enchanted you could actually get 1 per case.
That's pretty fair.
And that they weren't going to be worth infinite. So at that point, again, you were like, well, I can get an Elsa or I can get an Enchanted Elsa. And there were seemingly so many of them being open that affected her price in the beginning where she was, quote, undervalued. But once we actually had any kind of results or any kind of decks being made, yes, I think she was undervalued in the beginning.
Not even her. I just meant like in general, like legendaries in general.
Yes. I mean, because again, if you do the math, okay, so let's just say it's 5 per box on average, right?
Sure.
So 5 per box, there are 12 of them. So there's 60. So, okay, so if you need 4 of each, that's 48. And you're opening 5 per box. So even with absolute best distribution, you're talking about the average player needs 10 boxes. Let me tell you how few players can actually buy 10 boxes of product nowadays.
It's like impossible for, from what looks of it, like 99% of the player base.
Right. So if you want to build a master set for each card from scratch, only buying sealed product, it's impossible for 95 to 99% of players right now. So at that point, legendaries are undervalued because that's what you're going to need to finish those master sets if you are able to buy other product. Right. I think what has happened, though, is people are like, I can't get basically anything, so I'm just going to build my deck straight from singles, and that's what drives the price down.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Interesting. So let's talk about Elsa then.
So at LGS release, she's low at $32, basically on par with a lot of the other playable legendaries. And then again, all legendaries go up. Rising tide raises all ships. And that continues to happen. She is still prominent in every top 8 that you can find, dominating like one of the highest played cards in there, especially from the higher rarities. Owning more of her, having more of her in your deck is going to make your deck better. So she's like arguably one of the top 5 cards in the game. So what you wind up happening is after the big events and after the week goes on with the big box release, she just goes way up. She's over. I mean, at certain points, I saw her almost equal to Rapunzel, where she was basically almost $70 a lot of the times.
Okay.
But then she's just a casualty again of what's happening this weekend specifically, whereas certain stores had more product, so there's just more of her out there. So it's just more of a supply issue than it is a demand issue. So I would expect her to maintain her like value in the mid 50s. And if you could find any that are under 50, I would say it's probably a good deal right now. The one thing that's interesting to me is the spread between her normal and her foil, because there is an enchanted version. But what I will say is the enchanted version going for over $1,000 this week means that if you want to trick out your deck a little bit, it's best to just buy the foil version if you like that art. The other thing I've heard is that the enchanteds don't shuffle that well in terms of
really? Okay.
They're damaged more easily, I've heard. Like it's not that they're damaged more easily. I will say if you're going to play with them in general, they're not going to be like 10 grade after you play with them ever.
Oh yeah.
Of course. No. But I guess it's easier to scuff them because they're full art in certain spots. So if you're going to play with them, like they basically just wind up going from near mint to lightly played faster than a foil does. If that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay. I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, somebody told me that, so I'll believe them.
Grab your swords. So this is the first card in here that I believe is a starter deck card.
Right, which is why it starts out really low.
Right.
So it starts out low because they were like, if I buy the starter, I'm going to get it. Well, guess what? People aren't able to buy the starters. So what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
And that spread between foil and normal is because it's in the starter.
Right.
So then you have basically the PPG Denver event, and it just being a very powerful card in general, it raises the price to its high, and it pretty much stays up there. I mean, I sold these for double digits. Again, market price does not represent what you can actually get it for, just an average of what it has been sold during that like I think like the last 7 days or something like that. So it definitely has risen, and the foil spread is massive on this card because there aren't as many of them out there. It's just as rare as getting any other foil rare. So yes, you may have them if you're able to get your starters, and of course, big box stores did get a collection of starters.
Right.
The other thing I've noticed a lot is, and I mean, it is what it is, but like, if you're not a reseller, I've seen a lot of players out there on Facebook groups selling the contents of the starter still wrapped up and just keeping the pack for normally almost as much as you're buying the starter for at MSRP, but that's neither here nor there. So if you buy that, I don't even know what's wrapped in that little
mesh paper, or whatever
paper, I don't even know what it is.
It's like parchment paper.
Yeah. So if you're buying that starter cheaper than retail, a lot of times like $15 to $20 or whatever, you're getting a grab your sword in there.
Right.
So I mean, is it worth it to buy a starter deck? Yes, it still is worth it to buy a starter deck, but there's just more of them out there, and more of them out there for players that don't necessarily even want to, they don't really care about getting the pack and want to make the money back on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a whole other conversation, but it's just like, again, if you walk into Walmart, you're like, oh, I already have 3 starter decks. I don't need another starter deck. Well, if they don't have any other product and you want to open a pack, sadly, again, it's worth paying $17 to open a starter deck because, like, there's 3 cards in the deck that make you get your money back in theory, or what's like, quote, save you money even.
Yeah.
And then you get a booster pack.
Yeah. The main thing about you need to and this is a much longer conversation, but
Much longer.
Anytime you buy product that has like a set card, so like exactly what's in the starter. You're getting Grab Your Sword, Maleficent Uninvited. I don't even know what else, but like those are the two.
Even the Ariel, the Aurora.
Yeah, the Aurora, things like that. Like when you know what you're getting, and the Simba and things like that. Like I'm getting these 5 rares or above or whatever. So and everybody's getting that. That just saves you from having to buy those cards later.
Right.
So like 2 Fire the Cannons, commons and uncommons that are playable, you're saving yourself from having to buy those again later.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that you can turn around and sell all these commons and uncommons and bulk rares.
You just look at it as it's like it's cost saved.
It's saving you money.
Right.
So if you're able to go out there and get if you can find 3 Sapphire steel starters, it's saving you from having to buy 3 Grab Your Swords, which is making up a lot of the money that you're spending on those starters.
Right, and you get 3 shots of booster pack.
Yeah, so I mean, basically a starter only costs $11 anyway when it starts at 17 because you're getting a booster pack. So,
right, interesting. All right, so Cusco, this guy's had a pretty wild journey.
Yeah, so again, LGS release just undervalues cards in general. Starts out as a high rare at the time of LGS release, but then rares in general just go up again, and then that's right at the 9-1 barrier. So right at where LGS release isn't really that exciting. He goes way up in value, but he's leveled off since then. Again, like there's a lot of FOMO around not being able to get cards in general on 9-1, and he goes way up. He was like $25 at one point. You couldn't find as a low.
Yeah.
But he comes back down to earth because I think the results just aren't there. So, like the results for some of the final results of some of the Emerald decks just aren't there. Right. And if Steel and Ruby are really powerful, it just hurts a lot of his value. So it just depends on what goes from there. But like again, in the end, he is a rare. So again, the people that are opening product want to make back the money on selling actual cards. He's a card that moves, so they lower his value and then he immediately moves. So it's like I'm immediately making back the money. I have to, God forbid they wait 24 to 48 hours to make back the money on something. So some of the new sellers, they're like, okay, I'll just let them go. That drops the overall market price. But I imagine he maintains around this value. And if you can find them for under 15, it's probably a good deal.
Yeah, I think $15 for several of these cards is pretty fair. But then it also makes you look at, he's not a particular card, right? Like he's not like a card that's I'm only played in this one deck, right? In like this one archetype. Like he's just like, I'm just an Emerald good card.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when you look at Cusco and you can make an argument like, okay, this is going to remain a mainstay in Emerald for a long time. Whereas Be Prepared right now is the same rarity, but you're probably playing less of it more often and across multiple decks. So seeing that card stay below Cusco actually makes sense to me for the most point, unless it's like so very clear that this is the best deck in the game and you have to have 4 of them, and there just isn't enough to go around type argument. But I think
you also showed that the budget deck still played 4 Cuscos.
Yes, it was the most expensive card for sure in this budget deck.
So if you want to play a deck that's powerful, has results, and it's still under $200, you're willing to spend the money to get just the one card that's the most expensive. Yeah. So it keeps his value definitely in the double digits and may rise his price.
Like you're willing to spend $60 on your playset of Cusco's if the rest of your deck is going to cost $100.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, it's my favorite character in the game, Scott.
So
Tink. Yeah. Well, just so let me start real quick. Tink is one of those cards that I think will always dramatically fluctuate in my humble opinion, because like there's gonna be weeks where Steel looks like the greatest thing ever, and then there's gonna be weeks where steel looks like the worst thing ever.
I mean, I don't think she'll be under $30 ever again.
I don't think first of all, she shouldn't be under $30 again. Not will she, no, she shouldn't be under $30 again.
Right. So I don't think she'll ever be under $30 again. But I mean, again, you have LGS release. The dealers that were able to get a ton of product are sitting on a ton of super rares and want to make it seemed like super rares were coming out of the woodwork when you were opening boxes. So you're like, oh, I have these like 10 tinks. What am I going to do with them? I need to use them to make back money. Oh, if I can get $20 for a super rare, I'm good to go. Well, then again, not only is there product issues, but there's also results with her, where she's massively represented in the PPG top 8 as we went over, in the winners deck, in multiple top 8 decks.
I mean, she was
on stream a lot, like seeing the power of her a lot. If people watch the coverage, so she winds up going like above $35 all the way up to like almost $37, and then again it's just an issue of there being more product out there, so she comes back down to earth a little bit. But I think her $31 to $36 price tag is probably pretty fair, is where she'll wind up. $35.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can see the graph here, but like it was criminal that people were selling the foil tinks for under $30. Like I literally, I'm not kidding. I literally told Scott, I'm like, I will keep every foil tink that we own before selling that card at $30. Like there's no way.
Again, there's an enchanted version also.
There is an enchanted version, but I don't know. I don't know what the market price on that is. Did you put an enchanted market on? We should have put the Elsa market on here. How come you didn't say that one on here, Scott?
Because they're not all, when you look at the card, they're not all like together. Enchanted have their own section.
That's very, very fair.
Yeah.
So that was a couple cards that were very interesting, and just honestly, just understanding the market, understanding the differences through the first 3 weeks of the game. Because from here on out, right, we can have like a real conversation. From here on out, there's no certainty really whatsoever of what we're gonna get, right? I mean, like we know that there's cards coming in October, 2 LGSs. But we have no idea what the number really is. So far, the early market for the big box stores are all over the place. There's no like real the only accurate reports is what they get, but even then it's been different. Like every time you hear something, it's like, oh well, this one got this stash, and then this one got that stash. So it's like, what if you're a buyer, right? Like if you're a buyer, you haven't been able to find product. Do you think right now would be the more ideal time to buy those singles?
Yeah, we're recording this on the 9th of September. You should be buying singles this weekend.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, specifically like Sunday, Monday, there was a huge rise in prices, specifically from the better cards, but also, as like Scott was saying, in this rush of concept of, well, my Walmart didn't get 10 boxes.
Yep.
And when I got to 17 different Walmarts, I didn't find any packs.
Yep.
What do I do? And that was a huge cause of things going up. Now, granted, I don't even know that this is true, but like a fair amount of player base that was playing events early on already all have their cards. Now, there's one or two things that I think could happen, right? Like one, maybe those players start selling the cards back, right? Because if they don't have another event to play in for a couple weeks, whatever, just get my money, sell it back, right? Or there'll be less people trying to buy the cards. So therefore, like maybe now we can meet a demand.
I still think the demand for this game is way greater than the supply.
Right. So at the end of the day,
it will be until whenever that Q1 restock is.
Right. So at the end of the day, when the prices are low, you should buy singles.
Right now, there are more sellers. I wouldn't say there's more sellers than buyers, but there are a lot of. If you think you can trust a seller with a low number of sales and a low rating, and you can, I mean, TCG Player will protect you if you don't get your cards. So if you think you can take advantage of a seller that's out there that's charging too little compared to market, you should be buying.
Right. Fair enough. So all in all,
what you want to buy from us?
Right. So the pitch obviously here is is that we do have a store. We actually restocked this morning before we went live. If you're looking for a trusted seller, obviously you can find it here with us. And all in all, Scott, we covered only 8 cards here. There are more than this. We didn't even talk about the Enchanteds and how they have been drastic. I think maybe we'll have a sequel to the Enchanted effect from a couple weeks ago where, in all honesty, I think that the prices for some of them have kind of skyrocketed. Elsa is the standout, but others are also standing above $500 now, which I wasn't really anticipating that early on. In all honesty, I looked at it like, now that we're really hearing the numbers and understanding that even in a world where they are 1 in 96 packs, even if that's true, it's definitely not 1 in a case. So like, if your number is like, oh, I'm just going to buy my case, gets my 96 packs. Well, I can tell you that that's just bullshit. Again, it's not true. You should not rely on that number whatsoever. And honestly, you should feel fortunate if you opened an Enchanted in your case, because plenty of people open 0.
Yep, agreed.
But yeah, I think that those are the real interesting ones. I think the foil itself, really understanding some of the foil costs and some of these things has really been interesting. And if you really want to geek out and be nerdy about those things, then hit us in the comments, let them know, and we'll definitely get that information out to you guys. This has been a really long stream, the longest for just you and I ever, for sure. We covered 2 radically different topics for sure, but it was a lot of fun. The chat was awesome today. I think we, at one point we had over 50 viewers. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. We are going to get out of here. I'm going to go have a late lunch, and we'll catch you guys next week.
See you. Thanks.
See you guys.